Hello, I'm Dieter Loosenwhite, and you join me for a bit of a strange top 5. I mentioned in the top 100 when I was chatting with my brother that there are games that I've owned, but they didn't last long enough for me to play, either because I got them in to move them on specifically to see if I could make a little bit of money, or because they just didn't get played. And if something sits on my shelf for a long enough time and isn't getting played, it kind of has to go. I can't have everything. I do like collecting things, but I can't financially, space-wise, all these reasons, I can't hold on to everything. So I've moved some stuff on. That is a shame. I've been through and picked out my top 5 from that list of about 10-15 games, and then ranked them according to their rating on the website Board Game Geek, which is a giant database for all things board gaming. Do check it out if you're not familiar with it. If you are, you know what I'm talking about. It's like the go-to website. So there's a couple of different reasons for these, but I thought it would be an interesting one, since I'd already mentioned it with Rick, to go through. And so number 5 was on Rick's top 100, and it's a game I've still never played. It's a game called Yamatai from Days of Wonder. It has this beautiful production. I couldn't really tell you what the game is about. This is one I got specifically to sell. It was one that was going out of stock. Well, I got it home, showed it. We weren't interested enough to change my mind about selling it. It's that kind of thing. It was going out of print, I think, and so places were selling off surplus stock relatively cheap. So I thought, you know what, we'll give it a go. There's other stuff that I do want, but I can't quite afford. Let's see if we can turn this around, make a little bit of money on it. It's what I do. So we picked up Yamatai, and it is beautiful. The production looks amazing. It's in kind of peak Days of Wonder production era. Sorry, I'm just looking at my list down here. If I keep looking away, I'm not ignoring you. But it's just one I've never played. I'm told it's one I would enjoy. I believe it's Bruno Cathala, who's a designer. I like his stuff from what I've played, so I'd be definitely interested too, but that is Yamatai. Number 4 was a little bit of a disappointment for me. This is Snowdonia. This is still a game that I would love to play. This is one I'm actively looking for again. Now, a couple of years ago, I backed the deluxe edition that was being put out, and it was a good amount of money, and you know, there's only so much money available to put into board gaming, and so I was a bit unsure. Got the go ahead. We were okay, fine, let's go for it. Used some birthday monies and all those kinds of things, and then when it arrived, it wasn't a bad production, don't get me wrong. It just wasn't deluxe enough for me, for the amount that I had paid, for the amount that I was interested in this game. I'm interested in this game. It's a cool theme. You're clearing rubble and building track on the railroad up Snowdonia in Wales. And there are other maps for different railway lines, and it's just a really interesting thing. And there's a weather mechanism, which is always fascinating. It's kind of worker placement type thing. And it had been out of print, so when I was looking for it originally, I couldn't find it. So then this opportunity came up. So that's why I went for it, but it just wasn't deluxe enough for me for the price that I'd paid. So I managed to almost immediately sell it. I'd unpacked it just to make sure everything was there and everything was in good condition. Nothing had been damaged in transit, and it hadn't. Everything was great. So, but I listed it almost immediately because it's like, oh, it's just a shame. And actually they released a couple of fixes, if you like, afterwards. So I wasn't entirely wrong in my assessment, but managed to get my money back, essentially sent it off to somebody else. They paid me basically what I'd paid, so that's fine. But so I'm just looking for the normal basic version now. It seems like a really cool game, and it's got a nice kind of just British feel to it. So Snowdonia, number 4, owned it, never played it. Number 3 is the one that kicked off the idea for this list. This is Pandemic the Cure. This was on my brother's in my brother's top 100, as was Yamatai, actually. And I'd got this in a trade and got it. I was like, I'm not the biggest fan of Pandemic. It's okay, it's good. I get why people like it, but it just doesn't really work for me. Maybe the dice game will solve that. That's what the Cure is, essentially, is a dice implementation. And maybe that would do it, but it just sat on the shelf. I just kept looking at it going, oh, there's other things. And part of my problem is I get new games too quickly. So there were just always other things that I wanted to play first. So I had it. It sat on my shelf for a while, and then I think when the next Maths Trade came up on Board Game Geek, useful website. There you go. Can't speak. Check it out. It then went off, and that was it. So I'd still be interested to play it. It's probably the bottom of this list in terms of how much I'd want to play it, because it's still pandemic, but it might fix it for me and all those things. Apparently it's very good, but Pandemic the Cure came, went. Number 2 would be number 1 in what I want to play, is Summoner Wars. Now again, I think in a trade I'd got Summoner Wars Master Set, which was the product that you could get, which had taken some of the base Summoner Wars that come out years before, included some of the expansions into this kind of, here's loads of things. It's an asymmetrical 2-player battle game, but your units aren't miniatures or anything, they're cards, and so you're moving your cards around on this grid, and that's fascinating to me. And it's asymmetric fantasy sci-fi factions, which is right up my street, and so this seems like a game that suits me perfectly. But no one around me wanted to play it, and that sucks. There's no way in a head-to-head duel to play it by yourself. I do with Keyforge and such things. I'll play both sides, but that's to see how the decks work out, and that's like once per deck kind of thing. This would have taken 2 or 3 people to really want to invest in figuring out these different factions and trying different things and learning the game and doing all this stuff that I just didn't have access to. Obviously in my group we want to play multiplayer games, and if you've got another person that you play with and they don't care about the theme, it's hard to get them to play a new game. So very, very sadly I sold it, I moved it on, but a new version has been announced. I've seen some of the new artwork. It looks really cool. Maybe I'll get it again, see if I can find some other people who would be interested and really get stuck into Summoner Wars. It looks like my kind of game for sure. But I owned it, never played it. It's a shame. And number 1, this is in the top 100 on Board Game Geek. They rank all the games ever. Top 100 is massive, of like 100,000 games or something. Massive deal. At time of recording, I believe this is number 83. This is a game called Trois. Oh, I probably just offended lots of French people. I believe it's a city in France. Probably going to get that wrong. And this is a dice worker placement-ish, but you can use other people's dice if you pay them and all this stuff going on. So it's a really good crunchy Euro type game. And yet there are very competitive, and yet there's these disasters or challenges that come up round to round that you all need to solve, or something bad happens to everybody. So there's an element of cooperation without it being cooperative, because you might want to contribute to it the most, so you get rewarded the most, but equally other people do need to come in on it, so you need to be making a little bit of negotiation and deals within the things. And the dice are different colours, so they're different types of worker to do different stuff and specialise in different things. It just seems like this really cool Euro game. But this, similar to Yamatai, I got to sell. Rick had found this in like a closing down type shop, where they bought out loads of old stock and were just shipping it off, and it was super cheap. And I think this might break the rule ever so slightly, in the fact that I owned it because I paid for it with my money, but I never physically had this. We live in different cities. He'd found it where he is and had bought it where he is and kept it where he is until I sold it and gave him the money to ship it off somewhere else. So it was in my collection technically, so it just about qualifies for this list. But it's not an art style that I particularly like. It wasn't similar to Yamatai. It didn't have enough for me to go, yes, I want this myself. This is one, though, I'd love to play. I'd love to be taught. I'd love to learn and all that stuff, but not necessarily prepared to put my money into doing that at this point, given I've got enough games to be playing. He says, about to buy more, of course. But, so yeah, it came, it went, but specifically to sell on and to make money to buy other games, because that's the only way I can afford it, is by cannibalizing my own collection. That's how it works. So that's it. That's 5 games that I've owned but never played. Do you have any? I'd say I've probably got about 10, 15 on here. Some of them were Kickstarters that came in and I just wasn't impressed with because I'm picky. But if you sell them quite quick, you tend to get your money back. So that's been quite a few of them. But have there been great games that you've owned or just sat on your shelf and just never played and you've just had to move on? I'd love to hear what they are. Stick them down in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you don't already, and hit the bell icon so you stay updated when I put out new things. In between, just find me on social media, search Win Some Lose More. You'll find me. It'd be great to be in contact with you. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. I've been Dieter for Win Some Lose More. Thank you. Bye.